There is a man in this footage, you will see him, who turns toward the camera and looks directly into it, just for a moment, then looks away. He does not know I am watching him in 2026. He does not know what is coming 2 years after this film was shot. He just turned and looked and had somewhere else to be. Keep coming back to that moment, because it seems to me that is what history actually looks like. Not the monuments, not the flags, not the grand gestures that fill the history books. Just a man who turned toward a camera on an ordinary afternoon and had absolutely no idea he was standing at the end of something. I want you to remember that man who looked into the camera. We will come back to him. This is Oblique. And this is what one man's home movie accidentally captured.
In the summer of 1937, the city of Paris threw the greatest party the world had ever seen. They called it the Exposition Internationale d'Arts et Techniques dans la Vie Moderne, the International Exposition of Art and Technology in Modern Life. 44 nations built pavilions along the banks of the Seine. 34 million visitors came from every corner of the world over 6 months. The Eiffel Tower presided over all of it, lit at night like something from a dream, with a single word displayed at its base: Pax, peace. Philip Medicus was one of those 34 million visitors. We know almost nothing about him, only his name and the fact that he brought a color home movie camera to Paris that summer and filmed everything he saw, not for history, not for posterity, simply because he was there and it was beautiful and he wanted to remember it. His footage survived, and what he captured, without knowing it, without intending it, was the precise moment the world was pretending hardest that it was not about to destroy itself. The exposition was built around a single central avenue, and at the top of that avenue, two structures face each other across the open space, like opponents sizing each other up before a fight that had not yet been announced. On one side, the Soviet Pavilion, topped by sculptor Vera Mokina's monumental work, a Soviet worker and a collective farm woman, arms raised together, holding a hammer and sickle toward the sky. 80 feet of stainless steel, heroic, enormous, the image of a new world being built from nothing by the hands of ordinary people. Directly opposite, the Nazi German pavilion, designed by Albert Speer, Hitler's personal architect, the man who would later be convicted at Nuremberg for using slave labor, a tower crowned with a bronze eagle, Nazi flags at its base, sculptures of idealized Aryan bodies, arranged at its entrance like sentinels. Everything about it engineered to project one single message: permanence, the absolute certainty that this was not going anywhere. They stood there facing each other, all summer, in the middle of Paris, and the crowds walked between them, taking photographs. There is a moment in the footage where Medicus turns his camera toward a man in the crowd. The man notices he is being filmed. He looks directly into the lens, directly into the camera, directly into whatever future might be watching for one long moment. Then he looks away. Just beyond him, someone else is at a soda fountain counter, drinking a Coca-Cola beneath an enormous Coca-Cola sign, completely absorbed, completely content. Medicus found his way inside the American pavilion at some point that afternoon, and from inside he pointed his camera outward through a thin, translucent curtain at the avenue beyond. And through that veil, he captured something that no official photographer, no newsreel crew, no government camera ever quite managed to capture. Both towers, facing each other, seen through something gossamer thin, as if they were already becoming a dream, or a warning that had not yet been understood.
What Medicus captured through that curtain is the image this entire video has been building toward. Stay with it.
He probably thought it was an interesting composition. What he captured was a last moment two of the most catastrophically destructive forces in human history were still performing the role of civilized neighbors. 2 years after Medicus stood in that pavilion and looked through that curtain, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a secret agreement to divide Eastern Europe between them. Poland was invaded within weeks. The war began. But in 1937, the towers were still standing, and the crowds were still walking between them, and nobody was leaving. These were not foolish people. They were not ignorant people. They were people living in the only moment available to them, the present, doing what people do in the present, not knowing. There was one section of the exposition that Medicus filmed for several minutes, giving it the same careful attention he gave the Soviet statue and the Eiffel Tower. France called it the colonial section. It brought people from its territories in Africa and the Middle East to Paris, built their architecture along the Seine, displayed their art, their crafts, their faces. A man with a microphone introduced them to the crowd. The audience watched with interest. Medicus filmed it with the same mild tourist attention he gave everything else. The crowds walked through with the same cameras, the same curiosity, not knowing what that meant either. Or perhaps, and this is a more uncomfortable thought, knowing perfectly well. In another part of the grounds, away from the pavilions and the ideology, children were riding carnival rides. A woman sat under a tent and had her palm read. She held out her hand. The palm reader took it, studied the lines, said something. The woman nodded. We will never know what she was told. Two years after Medicus filmed those towers, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed a secret pact to divide Europe between them. Poland was invaded within weeks. The exposition grounds were occupied by German soldiers within 3 years. The pavilions were gone. Paris itself occupied. The word PX on the Eiffel Tower replaced by a Nazi flag. The fireworks still went off that final night of the exposition in November 1937, right on schedule. Everyone agreed they were magnificent.
I still don't have a word for what watching this footage feels like. Not grief exactly, not nostalgia, something closer to the feeling of finding a photograph of someone you never met and recognizing something in their face anyway. That man who looked into the camera, he was not trying to say anything. He just turned and looked and went back to his afternoon. And yet here we are. I think that is what stays with me most. Not the towers, not the flags, not what came after. Just an ordinary man on an ordinary afternoon who had no idea he was standing at the edge of something and looked directly at it anyway. Maybe that is all any of us ever do. This is oblique. There is always more beneath the surface.